The mansion gate stood open, like a mouth that did not want to swallow what it saw. Andrew, once the man whose name opened doors in Lagos, was on his knees on the hot interlocking tiles. His ash kaftan was torn at the elbow. Dust had turned it the color of old smoke. He pressed both palms together as if his hands were a small boat trying not to sink. Tears ran down his cheeks and dropped onto the tiles, darkening them like rain. "Jessica," he said, voice shaking. "Have mercy on me, please." Jessica stood a few steps away, stiff as a statue, hands folded across her chest. She was 27, dark-skinned and beautiful, with a calm face that could command a boardroom and quiet a noisy room. A gold ID card hung from her neck. It read, Jessica Agnes Foundation CEO. But right now, the card meant nothing. She looked at the kneeling man who had left her before she took her first breath home from the hospital. Behind her, Agnes, her blind mother, stood with a white walking stick. Her left hand rested gently on Jessica's shoulder, steadying what the world could not see, Jessica's shaking heartbeat. "It's all right," Agnes whispered, voice soft but sure. "My child, be calm." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She did not shout. She did not move. She only looked at Andrew like someone studying a storm. And then, as if every year of pain had climbed into her throat at once, Jessica spoke in a low voice that cut like ice. "Sir," she said, not calling him father, "stand up and leave our compound." Andrew trembled. "Please," he said, pressing his forehead to the ground. "Don't send me away. I have nowhere to go. They told me the only way my life can be saved is if you forgive me. You and your mother." Jessica's jaw tightened. Her eyes shone. The security guard at the gate lifted a hand, waiting for her signal. Years before this hot day, Andrew was a name that walked ahead of him. His face filled newspapers. His black SUVs rolled through Victoria Island like small ships. People greeted him with two hands. He smiled the smile of a man who believed the world had been made for him to enjoy. Agnes knew a different man. She knew him before the money grew wild. She knew his laugh when it was still light. She knew his hopes when they were simple. She was gentle and clever, with eyes that saw the good in people. When she got pregnant, she prayed for a safe birth and a loving home. The day Jessica came into the world was the day darkness came for Agnes's eyes. It started with a sharp pain, then a long night, then the scream of a newborn, then the whisper of nurses rushing. There was a mix-up, a mistake, a pressure on a nerve, and then a young mother who opened her eyes and saw only a wall of night. "Where is my baby?" Agnes asked, blinking at the sound of her own voice. "Where is my husband?" A nurse placed a warm bundle in her hands. A tiny hand grabbed her finger. Agnes smiled through tears. "My child." Andrew stood at the foot of the bed, heavy and silent. He did not come near. He did not touch the baby. He did not say, "Congratulations." He looked at the doctor. He looked at the darkness in his wife's eyes. He looked at the pink blanket that held his future. "Is it a boy?" he asked. "It's a girl," the nurse said, proud. "A healthy, beautiful girl." Andrew's face changed. Something sharp flashed and then went cold. He turned away. The next morning, Agnes woke to an empty chair. Andrew had left the hospital without a kiss, without a word, without looking back. He did not return. Agnes cried, not because she could not see, but because she could see who Andrew had become. She learned to hold her baby, to count steps, to listen for danger, to boil water carefully. When her father came, heartbroken, he held Agnes and the baby in a long hug. But he was old and sick, and money was a stranger. The family whispered behind doors. Some cousins mocked softly. Some friends stopped coming by. Still, Agnes chose love. She named her child Jessica because she believed God would see them. Life became a map of small victories. Neighbors left bowls of soup at the door. The church sent a young girl to sweep once a week. Agnes learned her home like a song. 10 steps to the kitchen, 8 to the bathroom, 3 to the cot where Jessica slept. When Jessica turned 5, she began to guide. "Mummy, careful," she would say, taking Agnes's hand. "There's a stool." At 7, she was reading the labels on medicine bottles. At 10, she stood outside a rich man's gate to sell orange juice after school, then ran home to warm food for her mother. Sometimes, in the quiet, Jessica would ask, "Mummy, where is Daddy?" Agnes would hold her close. "He is lost, my child," she would say, swallowing tears. But we are found. In school, Jessica was a star hidden in plain sight. Teachers said her name with pride. She walked fast, spoke gently, and did not waste words. A scholarship took her to university. A win at a small tech competition took her to a bigger one, and a chance meeting with a kind mentor who saw her fire became the door she needed. By her 20s, Jessica had turned the pain of her past into a plan for others. She built an organization that helped children of single parents. She created a fund to support people who had lost their sight, but not their hope. Cameras pointed at her sometimes. Headlines wrote her as the girl who built light from darkness. She did not like the attention, but she used it to raise money for others. And what of Andrew? The first loss was small, a deal that went to a rival. Then a trusted friend took a little more than his share. Then a greedy choice. Then a secret loan. Then a bad signature. It was like watching a fine shirt catch fire and doing nothing because the warmth felt good at first. People stopped answering his calls. The third wife left. The big house was sold to cover a debt. His last company died in a courtroom, buried by the words of lawyers and the weight of proof. One night, alone in a cheap room, he saw his face in a cracked mirror and did not know the man staring back. He went to pastors. He went to elders. He went to shrines he once mocked. He asked, "Why this fall? How can I rise?" Again and again, he heard one answer in different voices. The gate you closed is the gate you must open. Ask forgiveness from the wife you abandoned and the child you denied. Only then will your way clear. So he packed what was left of his pride into a plastic bag. He kept one old wristwatch and a small brown envelope that he never let out of his sight. He took a bus across town, walked the last kilometer, and stood outside the mansion of the young woman on the billboard, the CEO helping blind mothers and fatherless children. Her name, of course, was Jessica. Now the past and the present stood face to face on the tiles of a house that pain had built. Jessica's chest rose and fell. Her eyes were red but steady. The guard looked from her to Andrew. Neighbors' whispers floated through the gate like tiny birds. "Sir," Jessica said again, "please leave." Andrew's forehead touched the ground. "Agnes," he cried, lifting his head toward the woman whose voice he still knew. "I am sorry. I have said it 1,000 times to myself. Let me say it before you. I was a fool. I was cruel. I wanted a son to carry my name and forgot the God who gave me a family. I threw away light and chased shadows. Please, do not send me away. Please save me from the pit I dug." Agnes squeezed Jessica's shoulder. "My child," she said, "anger burns fast and leaves ash. But your life is a long road. Be wise." Jessica closed her eyes. She saw a baby's hand holding her mother's finger. She saw school shoes with holes. She saw the night her mother walked the house alone, cane tapping, to find a glass of water. She saw herself standing on a small stage, promising to fight for children who had no one. She saw the face of the man kneeling now, and she felt something she did not expect: fear. Not fear of him, but fear of what forgiveness might open inside her. "Open the gate," she told the guard. "Let him." Agnes's cane tapped twice. "Wait," she whispered. "Let him speak. Let the truth breathe. Then decide." Andrew nodded like a drowning man catching a breath. He reached shaking fingers into his kaftan and pulled out the small brown envelope he had guarded for years. It was soft at the corners, sealed and resealed, marked with old sweat. "There is something in here," he said, holding it out with both hands. "It belongs to you and your mother. It is the first brick I must move if I ever hope to stand again." Jessica looked at the envelope. The guard leaned in without meaning to. Agnes tilted her head, listening to the paper crackle in Andrew's hands. "What is it?" Jessica asked, voice steady but thin. Andrew swallowed. His eyes were glassy. "Proof," he said. "And a confession." He lifted the flap. The wind rose, hot and restless, and tugged at the edges of the paper, as if the air itself wanted to know what would fall out and change everything. The brown envelope trembled in Andrew's hands. His breath came shallow, his lips dry. Jessica's eyes stayed locked on him, cold, unreadable. The air inside the compound grew still. Even the chirping birds on the mango tree above seemed to pause, as if they, too, waited for the secret about to be revealed. Andrew tore the seal gently. Inside were old documents, Some hospital papers, a handwritten letter, and a folded photo that looked decades old. The edges were yellow and the ink had begun to fade. He handed the envelope to Jessica with both hands, like a man handing over his last piece of dignity. "Read it," he whispered. Jessica hesitated. Then, slowly, she took the papers out. The handwriting was shaky, but it was the same one that had once signed million-dollar deals and property papers across Lagos. Her eyes scanned the first line, "Is greater than, to my wife, Agnes, and my daughter. Jessica, if this ever finds you, it means I've lost everything but the truth." Jessica's lips parted slightly. Her heartbeat quickened as she read further. "Is greater than, when you became blind, Agnes, I was angry not at you, but at God. I thought my life had ended because I wanted a son who would inherit my name. I believed lies that a man's worth is measured by sons. I left you in that hospital because I was weak and foolish. I thought I could silence my guilt with wealth, but every kobo I made after that day was cursed. Every deal I signed was the beginning of my downfall. I know now what I did to you. Both broke me long before I lost my money. Forgive me before death finds me empty." Jessica stopped reading. Her hands trembled, the paper fluttered slightly in the breeze. Agnes's lips quivered. Her blind eyes seemed to glisten. "That's his handwriting," she whispered softly. Andrew's head dropped. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "Yes, it's mine," he said. "I wrote that when I thought I was dying in a hospital bed 5 years ago. But I lived. I lived only to see the full punishment of what I did. My businesses crumbled. My name became a warning. No one would hire me. No one even wanted to be seen with me. I've slept under bridges I once drove past in convoys." Jessica's expression flickered. For a moment, she saw the man she once imagined when she was a child, tall, confident, proud. Now, he was bent, weary, and desperate. "Why come now?" she asked, her voice low but steady. "Why after 27 years? Why not when we were hungry? Why not when my mother begged for medicine? Why now that we have everything you thought we'd never achieve?" Andrew's voice broke. "Because now, I finally understand what it means to be empty." Agnes reached for her cane and tapped the floor softly. "My child," she said gently. "Sit down." Jessica turned to her mother. "Mum, you don't know what he did to you, what he did to us." "I do," Agnes said calmly. "I lived it." She turned her face toward Andrew. "But I also know that forgiveness is the only sight a blind person truly needs." Her words hung heavy in the air. Jessica wanted to speak, but her throat locked. Memories of her childhood flashed in her mind, carrying buckets of water after school, patching torn uniforms, her mother walking alone at night, feeling the wall to find her room. She saw the loneliness, the laughter they forced, the nights they slept without power, the times she overheard people call her the blind woman's daughter. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You left us to die," she said in a trembling voice, "and now you want forgiveness because you lost money." Andrew shook his head quickly. "No, not because of the money, because I lost myself. I've gone everywhere seeking peace, but every door closed. A prophet told me that only the tears I caused can save me. And now I'm here. I don't deserve your mercy. Jessica, I only beg you to save me from myself." Jessica turned away, breathing fast. Agnes stood, steadying herself with her cane, and walked toward Andrew. The sound of her stick tapping against the tiles echoed. When she reached him, she knelt slightly, placing her hand gently on his bowed head. "Get up, Andrew," she said softly. "You've already punished yourself more than I ever could." Andrew lifted his head slowly, tears streaming down his face. "Agnes, you still call my name." "I never stopped," she said. "You gave me pain. Yes, but you also gave me Jessica. Through her, I saw the world even when I was blind." Jessica looked away, unable to hold the sight any longer. She started walking toward the door, but Agnes's gentle voice stopped her. "Jessica?" she called. "Come closer." Jessica turned, eyes red. Agnes smiled faintly. "If I could see today, I'd tell you what I already feel. That anger makes the world darker than blindness ever could. Don't let it chain you." Jessica wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Mom, he doesn't deserve it. Forgiveness isn't for him," Agnes said softly. "It's for you." Silence filled the mansion's courtyard. Even the breeze seemed to wait for what Jessica would do next. She walked toward Andrew, her footsteps sharp on the tiled floor. When she stopped before him, he didn't dare raise his eyes. Jessica took a deep breath. "I forgive you," she said finally, her voice shaking but strong. "But forgiveness doesn't erase the past. You're not my father in my heart. You're just a man I used to wish for." Andrew cried harder, pressing his face to the ground. Agnes reached for Jessica's hand and smiled through her tears. "That's enough, my child. Let him come inside." Jessica hesitated. "Inside?" "Yes," Agnes said. "Even an enemy deserves water when he's thirsty." Jessica sighed, then turned to the guard. "Let him in." The gate opened slowly with a metallic groan. Andrew crawled forward, still crying. The mansion looked huge and bright, a life he once threw away. He stopped by the front steps and turned back toward Jessica and Agnes. "Thank you," he said weakly. "Thank you for saving what's left of me." Jessica didn't answer. She only stared at him with unreadable eyes, but deep inside, something heavy in her chest began to shift, not disappear, but loosen slightly. As Andrew entered the house, his knees shaking, he paused and looked around the grand living room chandeliers, plush sofas, portraits of Agnes and Jessica on the wall. His eyes stopped at one framed photograph on a marble stand. Agnes and a young man smiling, holding an award beside Jessica. Andrew's expression changed. His heart skipped. Who is that?" Jessica turned sharply. "Why do you ask?" Andrew pointed at the frame. "That man, he looks familiar." Agnes turned her blind face toward them. "That's Jeremy," she said with a soft smile. "Jessica's fiancé." Andrew froze, his face draining of color. He stepped closer to the photo, his hands trembling. "No," he whispered, voice breaking. That can't be." Jessica frowned. "What are you talking about?" Andrew turned to her slowly, eyes wide with shock. "Jessica," he said in a trembling voice, "Jeremy is my son." For a moment, the room was frozen. Jessica blinked, confused. "What did you just say?" Andrew's lips trembled. He looked between the photo and Jessica as if trying to wake from a dream. Jeremy Johnson, his full name? Jessica frowned deeper. "Jeremy Andrew Johnson," she said carefully. "What about it?" Andrew's knees gave way. He slumped onto the sofa, clutching his head with both hands. "Oh God, what have I done?" Agnes tapped her cane forward, sensing the sudden shift. "Andrew, what are you talking about?" He lifted his face slowly, tears spilling from eyes that had seen too much regret. "Agnes, Jessica, Jeremy is my son." Jessica's mouth fell open. "What?" Andrew nodded, his voice breaking. "Yes, I had a child years after I left you. A boy. I thought I finally had what I wanted, a son to carry my name. I gave him my surname, sent him to the best schools abroad, spoiled him with everything I didn't give you. But when I lost everything, his mother took him and left. I didn't even know where they went. I never imagined." He pointed toward the photo frame again, trembling. "That he would find you." Jessica felt her breath hitch. "No, that's not possible." But Agnes's hand gripped Jessica's tightly. "Wait," she whispered, her face clouded with confusion. "Andrew, are you sure?" Andrew nodded painfully. "Yes. His mother's name was Margaret. She was my second wife. We divorced before Jeremy turned 5. He was my only son." Jessica's hands shook as she held the photo. She remembered Jeremy's gentle smile, his caring eyes, the way he had supported her mother's charity foundation with quiet kindness. "This can't be real," she whispered. "Jeremy and we've been planning our wedding for months. We even set the date." Agnes gasped, covering her mouth. "My God." Andrew stood suddenly, pacing the floor like a man losing air. "Jessica, I didn't know. I swear before heaven, I didn't know. When I met you today, I had no idea that the man in your life was my son. But now I understand why everything around me collapsed. I destroyed one family, and without knowing, I nearly destroyed another." Jessica stared at him in disbelief. "You're saying I've been dating my half-brother?" The words felt like poison in her mouth. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Agnes sank into the sofa, her walking stick falling beside her. "God, this is too much," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. Jessica turned away, clutching her head. Her chest rose and fell sharply. This can't be happening." We just met through a conference 2 years ago. He proposed last month. He told me his father died abroad. Andrew's face twisted in shame. That was the lie his mother told him. She didn't want him to know me after the divorce. I searched for him for years, but no one would tell me where they went. He moved closer to Jessica, desperate. Please believe me, I didn't know. I swear on my life I didn't. Jessica's voice cracked. Stop talking, she cried, covering her ears. Stop. The echo filled the bright living room, bouncing off the marble floors. Agnes reached out blindly, her voice shaking. Jessica, my child, breathe. Please. Jessica fell to her knees beside her mother, her tears wetting the floor. Mum, everything we've built, everything I thought was love, it's ruined. It had to scum. Agnes wrapped her arm around her daughter, tears soaking her cheeks, though her eyes saw nothing. No, my child, love isn't ruined, it's just wounded. We will find the truth. Andrew sank to his knees too, hands clasped. Jessica, I'll find a way to fix this. I'll find the truth. Maybe there's a mistake, maybe I'm wrong. Let me prove it. Please. Jessica looked up at him with raw pain. If you're wrong, I'll forgive you again. But if you're right, if Jeremy is truly your son, then you've destroyed my heart beyond repair. Andrew dropped his head. I deserve that. Silence stretched between them, heavy, suffocating. Then Agnes spoke softly, her voice trembling. There's only one way to know the truth. Jessica turned to her mother. What do you mean? A DNA test, Agnes said quietly. You must find out before the wedding. You can't live in confusion. Andrew nodded slowly. She's right. I'll pay for it. Anything, just to be sure. Jessica laughed bitterly through her tears. You have no money left to pay for anything, remember? The words cut deep, but Andrew didn't argue. Then I'll walk barefoot to the hospital if I must, he said. Whatever it takes. Agnes held Jessica's hand tightly. Call Jeremy, she whispered. Tell him to come. Jessica hesitated. Her fingers trembled as she picked up her phone. The ringing tone felt like thunder in the silence. Hello, my love. Jeremy's cheerful voice came through. I've been trying to reach you. Are you okay? Jessica's throat locked. She glanced at Andrew, who was now trembling. Jeremy, you need to come home. Now. What's wrong? Jeremy asked, concerned. Please, Jessica said softly. Just come. There's something you need to hear. When she ended the call, the room went still again. Agnes sat quietly, whispering a prayer under her breath. Andrew paced slowly, guilt heavy on his shoulders. Jessica wiped her face, trying to stay strong, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. 20 minutes later, a silver Lexus pulled up at the gate. Jessica's heart pounded. The guard opened the gate, and Jeremy walked in wearing a navy blue suit, his tie slightly loosened, a bright smile on his face, until he saw the man standing near the door. His steps faltered. Dad? Jessica froze. You knew him? Jeremy's expression went pale. His lips parted, but no words came out. Andrew's legs shook. Jeremy, he whispered. My son. Agnes's cane slipped from her hand and clattered against the floor. Jessica turned toward Jeremy, her face twisted in disbelief. Jeremy, what's going on? She asked. You told me your father was dead. Jeremy swallowed hard, his voice cracking. Jessica, please, I can explain. Explain what? Jessica's voice rose. That you're my half-brother? That the man I hate most in this world is your father? Jeremy took a step forward. No. Jessica, please. Listen. I didn't know you were. Enough, Jessica cried, covering her face. Both of you just stop. Andrew reached out toward her. Jessica, don't touch me, she snapped, her eyes burning with tears. Jeremy stood frozen, guilt and confusion clouding his face. Agnes began to weep quietly, her shaking hands clasped together in prayer. For the first time in his life, Andrew felt the full weight of his sins, not the loss of his money or power, but the destruction of every heart that once loved him. Jessica took a deep breath and turned toward the door. Get out, she said in a trembling voice. Andrew froze. Jessica, please. I said get out. Both of you. Her voice broke into a sob as she pointed to the gate. Jeremy looked at her helplessly. Jessica, please. But she didn't look back. She ran up the stairs, her cries echoing through the mansion. Agnes sat silently, her face lifted upward, tears streaming down her blind eyes. God, she whispered, how much more pain must one heart bear? Outside, thunder rumbled in the sky, though the sun still burned bright. Andrew and Jeremy stood by the gate, speechless, two broken men bound by the same past and the same woman's tears. The mansion that once echoed with peace now carried only the sound of sorrow. Upstairs, Jessica's cries were muffled behind her bedroom door. Downstairs, Agnes sat quietly on the sofa, her fingers wrapped around her walking stick, whispering prayers that trembled through the air. Outside, under the mango tree, Andrew sat on the curb with Jeremy beside him, father and son, both silent, both drowning in shame. The compound that once rejected one now seemed to cage them both. Jeremy finally broke the silence. You ruined her, Dad. His voice was soft but full of weight. Andrew looked up slowly. His eyes were swollen, his throat dry. I ruined everyone, he said simply. And now I see the curse I built with my own hands. Jeremy clenched his fists. Why didn't you tell me you were alive? You let me grow up thinking you were dead. You let Mom lie to me. Andrew shook his head. I tried to find you. I begged your mother to let me see you, but she wanted nothing to do with me. I was no longer the man she married. I was a scandal, a lesson in failure. Jeremy exhaled sharply, pacing. And now, because of your secrets, Jessica, my fiancée, is my sister. Do you realize what you've done? Andrew's voice cracked. Do you think I wanted this? I came here to beg for forgiveness, not to destroy you both. I never imagined. He covered his face with his hands. The sins of a father always find his children. Jeremy kicked a small stone across the tiled compound, frustration burning in his chest. I can't even look at her now. She won't pick my calls. She told me to leave. Andrew lifted his head. She will need time. She's strong like her mother. I should have known that from the start. At that moment, the front door opened. Agnes stood there, her blind eyes fixed toward the sound of their voices. Jeremy, she said softly. Come. Jeremy hesitated, then obeyed. He walked over and stopped in front of her. Agnes reached out her hand, and he took it gently. Sit, she said. He did. Andrew stayed where he was, watching them from a distance. Agnes's voice was calm but firm. My son, she said, I have lived long enough to know that truth, no matter how painful, is always better than lies. What you and Jessica shared was real, but it cannot continue. You both must heal separately. Jeremy's eyes filled with tears. Mama, I love her. Agnes nodded slowly. I know, but sometimes love must stop before it becomes sin. That doesn't mean it was meaningless. It means it served its purpose. It revealed what needed to be healed. Was written though the world, and woed out the rue. Jeremy dropped his head into his hands. How do I tell her goodbye? Agnes smiled faintly. With honesty and peace. That's all she needs from you now. Jeremy nodded weakly, fighting back tears. Agnes turned her head slightly toward the direction where Andrew sat. And you, she said quietly. Come forward. Andrew hesitated, then rose to his feet. The sound of his sandals scraping against the tiles seemed to echo the weight of his past. He stopped before her, head bowed. Agnes, he whispered, you shouldn't even allow me near your door. She tilted her face toward his voice. You're right, she said, but forgiveness isn't permission, it's release. I forgave you because I refused to stay a prisoner to pain. But you, Andrew, must now forgive yourself. He looked up, confused. Forgive myself? How can I forgive a man who destroyed his own family? By starting again, she said. Not with money or power, but with repentance. You've lived rich. Now live right. Tears streamed down his cheeks. I don't even know how anymore. Agnes nodded. Then I will show you. You'll stay here, not as family, but as a man who must learn humility. You'll help in the foundation. You'll serve those you once ignored. Andrew's lips parted, disbelief crossing his face. You'd let me stay here? Jessica's voice came from behind them. He won't stay in this house. They all turned. Jessica stood at the top of the staircase, her face pale and tired from crying, but her posture still strong, the same fierce confidence that made her the woman she was. Mom, she said quietly, walking down step by step. He can work for the foundation, but he's not staying here. Under Stokes' calm, Agnes opened her mouth to speak, but Jessica held up her hand. No, Mom. You gave him forgiveness. I gave him mercy. That's enough. He needs to earn his peace, not rest in it. She turned to Andrew. There's an old guest house beside the foundation. You can stay there. You'll be paid the same way any worker is paid, no favors. Andrew bowed his head. Thank you, he whispered. Jessica's eyes were wet but hard. Don't thank me. Thank the woman who raised me blind, fed me without sight, and made me see the world through her pain. That's who you should thank. Andrew turned to Agnes and knelt. Agnes, he said softly, thank you for giving me another chance to be human. Agnes's lips trembled. Just don't waste it. Jeremy stood up. Jessica looked at him with a pained expression. Please don't, she said. Don't make this harder. He nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I know, she said softly. But knowing doesn't change what's true. You'll always be special to me, Jeremy, just not in the way I once thought. Jeremy's eyes filled with tears again. So this is goodbye. Jessica smiled faintly, though her tears fell. Yes, goodbye. He hesitated, then hugged her, a soft, broken hug that carried everything words couldn't. When he stepped back, she turned away, wiping her face. Agnes reached out, sensing the moment ending. Jeremy, she said gently, come by tomorrow. I'll pray for you before you go. Jeremy nodded, forcing a weak smile. Yes, Mama. He turned toward the gate and walked away slowly. The sound of his car engine faded into the distance, leaving only silence behind. Jessica stood quietly, her gaze falling on the man who had caused all this pain. You wanted a son, Andrew, she said, her voice trembling. Now you've lost both your son and your daughter. Andrew swallowed hard. Maybe that's the only way to find my soul again. She said nothing. She turned and walked toward her mother, gently holding Agnes's hand. Mom, let's go inside. As the two women disappeared into the house, Andrew remained kneeling in the courtyard, alone. The sky above darkened, and a soft rain began to fall quiet, cleansing drops that soaked his kaftan and mixed with his tears. He lifted his face toward the grey clouds and whispered, God, if you can hear me, let my suffering mean something. Inside, Jessica watched from the window, her heart torn between pity and anger. Her mother's voice came softly from behind her. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, my child. It teaches us how to live with it. Jessica nodded silently, her gaze still on the man kneeling in the rain. She didn't know it yet, but that rain was the beginning of something that would soon shake all their lives again. The next morning came quietly. The rain had stopped, leaving behind puddles that glistened like small mirrors on the tiled compound. Birds sang softly from the mango tree. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with silence, the kind that holds both peace and pain. Jessica sat by the window, watching the sunrise glow across the compound. Her eyes were swollen, but calm. Beside her, Agnes moved gently with her cane, her blind eyes focused on nothing but her daughter's voice. You didn't sleep again, Agnes said softly. Jessica sighed. I couldn't. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Agnes smiled faintly. Whose face? Jeremy's or your father's? Jessica hesitated, then whispered, both. Her mother nodded knowingly. Then it means your heart still works. It still feels. And that's a gift, my child. Don't let pain harden it. Jessica turned to her. Mom, how did you forgive him so easily? After everything? Agnes reached out and touched Jessica's cheek. I didn't forgive easily, she said. I forgave because hate makes blindness worse. When I forgave your father, I didn't do it for him. I did it for you. Jessica's lips trembled. She took her mother's hand and kissed it gently. A knock came at the door. It was light, hesitant. Jessica frowned. Come in. The door creaked open, and Andrew stepped in slowly. His kaftan was washed, but still old. His eyes were tired, his hands trembling slightly as he held an envelope. Good morning, he said quietly. Jessica didn't respond. Agnes did. Good morning, Andrew. He nodded gratefully. I came to thank you both. For everything. For giving me a chance to breathe again. Jessica stood. You've been working at the foundation, haven't you? He nodded. Yes. It's the hardest and most beautiful thing I've ever done. The people I once ignored now feed me with stories that humble me every day. Yesterday, a blind boy called me Uncle Andrew. I haven't heard my name said with respect in years. It broke me. Agnes smiled gently. That's how healing begins in service. Andrew nodded. You were right. I lost money, but I found something greater. He looked down at the envelope. I wanted to give this to you, Jessica. She frowned slightly. What is it? He handed it to her. It's the last thing I own that still has value. It's the document for my old estate, the one I built before greed blinded me. I want you to use it for the Foundation's new school project. Let it do what I couldn't build a future. Jessica hesitated, then took it. Why are you giving this to me? Andrew's eyes filled with tears. Because it never really belonged to me. It was always meant to serve the people I wronged. Jessica looked at him for a long time. Thank you, she said softly. But I can't promise I'll forget everything you did. I don't want you to forget, Andrew said. I only want you to remember me as a man who finally understood what love costs. Agnes's cane tapped twice. Jessica, she said, forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without hate. Jessica nodded, tears rising again. Andrew slowly moved toward the door, then stopped. There's one more thing, he said. I haven't seen Jeremy since that day. I don't expect him to forgive me. But I hope you'll both pray for him. Agnes's lips curved into a small smile. He came by early this morning, she said. He sat in the living room while you were at the foundation. I prayed for him. He's leaving for the UK tomorrow. He said he needs time and space. Andrew's shoulders sank. Then maybe that's for the best. Jessica looked down, her voice barely a whisper. Did he say anything for me? Agnes nodded. He said he'll always care for you, even from afar, and that when you see the Foundation's new school open, you should smile for him. Jessica's tears fell freely. He always knew what to say. Andrew stood quietly for a moment, then turned to leave. As he reached the door, Agnes's gentle voice stopped him. Andrew, she said, you can go in peace. But remember, a man's true wealth is not in what he leaves behind, but in who he becomes before he leaves. He bowed deeply. Thank you, Agnes, for giving me a chance to be human again. Then he left, stepping into the soft morning light. 2 months later, the new Agnes Foundation School for the Blind opened in Surulere. It was a bright building, painted in white and blue, filled with laughter, music, and hope. Cameras flashed. Reporters crowded the entrance. Jessica, now stronger and calmer, stood at the podium with her mother by her side. The crowd cheered as she adjusted the microphone. My mother taught me that blindness is not the absence of sight, Jessica said, her voice steady. It's the refusal to see love, mercy, and forgiveness. Today, this school stands because of those lessons and because of redemption. The crowd applauded. Agnes smiled proudly, holding Jessica's hand. But at the edge of the crowd, one man stood quietly, wearing a clean kaftan and simple sandals. Andrew. He stood away from the cameras, tears glistening in his eyes as he watched his daughter, the one he had abandoned, speak life into others. When the ceremony ended, Jessica turned and noticed him. For a brief moment, their eyes met, father and daughter. No longer enemies, just two souls finally at peace. She gave a small nod, not a smile, but something deeper. A silent, I see you. Andrew pressed his hands together and whispered, thank you. He turned and began to walk away slowly, down the long road that led away from the school. As he reached the corner, his legs trembled. He leaned against a wall, clutching his chest. A deep breath escaped him, and then another, softer, slower. He smiled faintly, looking up at the sky. God, thank you for giving me one more sunrise, he whispered. Moments later, he slumped gently to the ground. His heart stopped, not in pain, but in peace. When news reached Jessica, she stood still for a long time. Then she whispered, he came to see us one last time. Agnes squeezed her hand, tears gliding down her cheeks. He found forgiveness, Jessica. That's more than most men find in a lifetime. Jessica nodded, her voice trembling. Then I'll make sure his name helps others see again. That year, the foundation launched the Andrew Fund, a scholarship for children of broken families, giving them education and hope. Every anniversary, Jessica would stand at the window of the school, her mother beside her, and watch the children playing in the courtyard, laughing, learning, living. And each time the rain began to fall softly against the windows, Agnes would smile and whisper, do you hear that, my child? That's the rain that redeemed your father. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.